Do you believe art can change the world? So do I. On this show, we meet artists whose work is doing just that. Welcome to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. I'd love to know, how many of you listening loved art as children, but were discouraged from pursuing it as a career? Maybe by a family member, maybe by a really mean teacher who told you that you didn't have any talent. How did you find your way back to art? When I was growing up, I didn't even know that a person could be an artist. I remember telling my parents that I was taking film classes in college. The shock of their reaction to that. They kept asking, "What do you mean? Are you trying to be an actress?" "No, Mom, I'm talking about making films." Long pause. "Like an actress?" Today I'm talking with Shawn B. Standley, an artist who works on commission and is also in charge of the urban gardening program at the Faulkner County Library in Conway, Arkansas. Shawn was also discouraged from pursuing art as a career, and his path to finding his way back has many, many twists and turns. A twisty path would also describe his adventures of moving up and down the West Coast, then into the wilderness of Alaska, where he first started painting commissions and really discovered how powerful it can be to create art for someone else. And the latest chapter for Shawn has been this move to Arkansas. I grew up in Arkansas, but I've lived on the West Coast all of my adult life. Shawn's journey feels a little bit like looking through the other end of a telescope for me. But what I see and learn from Shawn really shows me that it's not so much about the place, it's about the person. The art scene in Conway, Arkansas is completely different than anything Shawn has experienced before. To make the connections and find the community he needed first started with him really figuring out his why. Why create art? Why do it here? What does art really even mean to me at this point in my life? And he found that the answer to those questions was another question. How can I use my art to be of service? You want to know how you can really help me keep this show going? Follow me on your favorite listening app. So easy, right? And if you really want to give the show a boost, leave me a 5-star rating or review. Hi, Shawn. I'm so glad that you are coming onto Art Heals All Wounds to talk with me. I know some about you. I know that you really have a couple of different practices or professions that are rooted in an idea of service. Maybe you have more, but I know of two from reading about you and seeing your work. Would you describe a little bit about these two different professions?
Absolutely. And first, I am truly honored to be here today and being a part of this community. It's kind of a dream come true. So thank you all who are listening, and thank you, Pam, for having me today. Yes, this idea of service. I'm a professional artist who's been painting with intention for over 25 years, which is crazy to think, over half my life. And I also work at the county library where I live here in Conway, Arkansas, the Faulkner County Library, where I am the garden programmer and oversee the Faulkner County Urban Farm Project, among other things, both of which are fulfilling for me in being able to serve the community and people in different ways.
Right. And Obviously, I'm going to want to talk about your work as an artist, but I do want to hear a little bit more about your job there at the library. What I've read is that it's actually quite extensive when we're talking about. Did I read correctly that the library has like a 40-acre garden, or there's a public 40-acre garden?
Our garden, we do have a couple of community gardens here in Conway. Our garden, our library sits on about 8 acres, and the community garden portion of it is probably about an acre plus of garden. It's an old farm, and so there's a lot of acreage, about half of it, 4 to 5 acres, that's still pasture and orchard that we are slowly beginning to incorporate into the garden out back as we get grant funds and other resources and partnerships to help us develop that space.
Okay, so I'm just totally making up this 40-acre.
Winnie the Pooh, right? I love it.
Well, but an acre is still huge. An acre
It's
is a lot, is a big garden.
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, we have a community garden within that, 40 plots of 4 by 4 raised beds that are open to the community for free in exchange for volunteer time helping take care of the garden, where we help teach people to become food literate and make good healthy choices, become empowered, learn to just make healthier lifestyle choices through gardening, through community. And it's amazing how much food you can grow in a 4 foot by 4 foot area, let alone an acre.
Well, this is neither here nor there, but my grandmother used to have about an acre garden that she would, in the summertime when we go visit her, put myself and the cousins all to work in, to the point where we would hide from her because it was so huge. It was so much work. But this all sounds like you talk about these gardens, pasture, orchards. It sounds idyllic, but it's probably not. I'm probably romanticizing it.
Well, it's interesting because so we're in the city of Conway, which is around 50, 60,000 people, but this land was donated to the county by the family that had the farm 30 years ago. And so it's this little postage stamp of county property nestled within the city of Conway. So it's literally like a little park that just kind of got set aside and like a little slice of time kind of cut out of the middle of Conway. So it is pretty special actually that we're there.
Right. I guess what I'm wondering then now, as you describe it that way, is like, what is the impact of having this space within this urban area? What's the engagement like from the people in the urban area? And what are your goals in terms of engagement with the people of Conway?
That's a really interesting question because I've changed so much and learned so much and had my eyes opened to what libraries are. I grew up across the street from a county library, literally across the street in Central California, and I didn't have a lot of kids in my neighborhood my age. So my library was my best friend, and I spent hours and hours in the stacks there. And my parents worked, so I would just walk across the street and spend my day in the library. And it was a very shh library, hush hush library. And we are anything but hush hush library. The Faulkner County Library is really a community center. And I think that's what libraries are evolving into as the information age has come about and we all have access to so much information. People say, well, why do we need books? And that's a good question. And libraries have adapted to that environment. And now we have everything from taxes to Tai Chi, I mean, and gardening. It's really, we're picking up the pieces of where government services and other community services fall short. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that about libraries. I didn't know that's what Conway needed. Our town is about 50, 60,000, as I mentioned. In a busy summer month, we have devices that count how many people come in and out the doors. I think in July last summer, we saw 50,000, roughly 50,000 patrons in 1 month.
Wow.
That's the entire population of Conway in numbers. So it's mind-boggling how much we impact the community and how much the community uses the library.
That's actually an amazing statistic. Have you been an artist your whole life? Did you, as a child, were you, like, what's your path to coming to be a practicing artist?
It's anything but a straight line. Yeah, I think a lot of artists find that they were creative as children. I was no different. I loved to draw. I would copy artwork from things in my life that I enjoyed, comic books or games. In my teens, I used to love to copy album covers of my favorite bands and put them up on my walls. My mom always saved all of my doodles and put them on the fridge and embarrassed me by showing our guests my silly little drawings. Even when I got older, Shawn did this when he was, whatever, 10 or what, and I'm sitting there holding my head in my hands, saying, Mom, don't talk it. That's awful. It's awful. Don't show that. But she was so proud. But it didn't lead to a path into art. I'm also very, what is it? I always get it mixed up, right brain, left brain. I'm very math, engineering, science oriented. And I excelled at that as well. I did well in art classes, and I always took art electives in high school and junior high. But I really excelled in math and science. And my parents were separated, so I spent my high school years with my father. He really, really reinforced that side of me and the practicality of, career and future and job and all that stuff. He did not support the arts at all, considered it a hobby. And I ended up getting scholarships to go to college in Southern California for engineering. And I also wanted to be an astronaut. I was a dreamer. So I went off to school to become an aerospace engineer and was miserable.
Mm.
Um, the people I gravitated to, my friends, were artists, theater majors, filmmakers. I just found myself spending late nights in the art studios with my friends who were art majors. I didn't hang out with my engineering friends. I hung out with my art friends. That happened pretty quickly. And I ended up dropping out of college and not finishing my engineering degree, 1 month shy of my degree.
Wow.
And my mom asked me, why didn't you just finish? And I said, Mom, 99% of the jobs out there that might require this degree, I don't want. And then I bounced around a lot. I worked a lot of odd jobs and traveled a bit, moved around to several states. Art was always kind of in the background. I did it a little bit here and there, a little doodle, little sketch. I was in a band for a while and I did all of the promotional posters and album covers for our CDs that usually ended up in used record stores for $1. So my path to art is as rambling as this story. Um, I did a stint in the service. I was in the Navy for a while. When I got out of the service, I kind of started life over. I was in my mid late 20s, and I thought to myself, I get to start life over. And I decided to follow my old college buddies, and that led me up to the Pacific Northwest. I moved to Whidbey Island, which is a really creative community, a lot of musicians, artists, just a really wonderful creative place. And just through serendipity, I ended up meeting a local artist. His name was David Hubbard, and he had a weekly paint night at the local art co-op.
Hmm.
And he said, You should come. And up until that point, I was, again, kind of playing with art here and there, but really not happy with what I was producing. So I started going to these paint nights. I would load up my easel and my paints and I put them in my mufflerless pickup truck and drive half an hour noisily down the road to the art co-op, and it was just a magical place. It was a safe place, a nurturing place. David and his friend Norma, also a really talented artist, just created a really welcoming environment for anybody that showed up. And we paid a couple bucks a week, like $3 or $5 to keep the lights on. It was affordable, it was accessible, and I started to really paint.
Mm.
And we would all bring things from home, like anything from home, a pine cone, a stuffed animal, whatever. We pile them on this table in the middle of the room to have something to look at. And you could work on something of your own, or if you didn't have anything, we would draw what was ever in the room. And I loved David's style, his technique as an artist. And so I began to kind of emulate him a little bit, which I think is common in the art world. When you get a mentor, he became my mentor.
Right.
And my skills began to really solidify and take shape. And because we were a group of artists, David also would help organize periodic shows, group shows at the art store. And so I started participating in those, and I sold my first painting.
Wow.
And yeah, and then people were like, you should do more of this. And I was like, that feels really good. So I started doing more of it, and I just completely became obsessed. I was building houses at the time. I was a carpenter, and I would build houses for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and then come home and then paint until I was too tired to do anything else. And that's all I did. And it was such a magical time in my late 20s. Just, I felt like I had boundless energy and I was cranking out paintings and doing more shows and selling more paintings, and eventually had my own solo show and sold more paintings. And that inspired me to go back to college. So I said, okay, Shawn, I'm going to give yourself permission to take on some student loans and go try this thing, like really do this thing.
So
And
an
so
art school is what you're saying.
yeah. So I applied to Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle and was accepted as an interview process and all that. And moved to Seattle and began life as an art student. And it was really cool at first, but the urban art scene, and maybe big cities are like this, or maybe it was just back then, really turned me off. It was very competitive. It was the galleries were king, and it didn't seem like people played very nice in the sandbox.
Mm.
And I did really good at school. I got their top scholarship, and I was going back to school at a later age was really awesome because I could relate to my faculty, my professors. We were peers, and that was a cool experience. I wasn't just an angry 19-year-old painting in black and white and red. Had some life under my belt. And I remember the first time one of my professors, a sculpture professor, Stephen Lammy, he's like, "Hey, do you want to go out for a beer sometime?" And we went out to Ballard and had a beer. And I'm like, you're allowed to do that? You can have a beer with your professor?" Because I was an adult. I just didn't know you could do that. And it was
Right.
so cool. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I got really jaded about the Seattle art scene. And I realized that a degree in art for me, I think unless you want to teach or stay in academia, I didn't see the need for a degree. And so I left school again and moved down to Bend, Oregon, where my college mates had migrated to. And we tried to start playing music again. So art was always, and then art kind of got in the background, right? You pick up a day job and you got to pay the rent. And so I'm doing art side, a little here, a little there. And then my wanderings eventually led me up to Alaska. I took a summer job on a fishing boat. It was awful, miserable, but Alaska got under my skin. And I was managing restaurants and had moved back to Seattle, managing restaurants for this company. And I just started dreaming about Alaska. So I went down to Pike Place Market. I bought this giant 6-foot map of Alaska and put it on my wall. And I would sit there at night and just daydream of all the little places in Alaska I might go. My heart was like pulling me to Alaska. I was loading freight cars down on the rails in Seattle at the rail yards. And a buddy of mine says, Shawn, what the heck are you doing with your life, man? And I said, well, I want to get to Alaska, but I don't know how. And so he said, well, hey, my buddy actually grew up in Anchorage and he knows a guy that owns a restaurant there. And I said, okay, well, I'll give him my resume. About 2 weeks later, I was sitting at home on a Friday night and I got a phone call from the owner of Humpy's Great Alaskan Ale House. There's rock music playing in the background. It was loud and he's screaming on the phone, "Hey, are you serious about moving to Alaska?" And I said, yes. And he said, I need a restaurant manager like now. And I said, okay, I'll see you on Monday. So I literally bought a plane ticket and flew up there on Monday. We interviewed. I said, give me 2 weeks to get my affairs in order. I got back to Seattle. I packed a steamer trunk and a duffel bag and a backpack. I put the rest of my belongings in the alley behind my apartment building and hopped on a plane and headed up to Alaska.
Wow.
Again, art was always just kind of in the background. I would sell a painting here and there for a couple bucks. Somebody might say, "Oh, can you do something for me?" okay, sure. So I always kept an easel, I always kept, my paints around, but it wasn't my focus. I ended up managing this restaurant in Anchorage for about 6 years, but I really wanted to experience rural Alaska, like the whole Alaska thing, and ended up discovering this little village called Talkeetna, about 900 people in the foothills of the Talkeetna Mountains up near Denali. And of all things, there's a brewery there and a brew pub. And I got to know the owner because I would buy his beer at the restaurant I was managing in Anchorage, and we became friends. And I eventually bought a little cabin in Talkeetna, kind of a summer getaway place. And the owner of Denali Brewing found out and he said, "Hey, I saw you bought property. Are you moving to Talkeetna?" And I said, "Man, I would love to live there, but there's no jobs." And he said, "What if I could change that for you?" And so offered me a job managing the restaurant there and working for the brewery. So made the move to Talkeetna, and after a couple of years there, I ended up meeting who is now my wife. We were neighbors there. She was with her ex, and I was with my ex. And as little small town happenings happened, we both ended up single and then together in the small town. My boss was very supportive of my artistic endeavors. He commissioned some work for the restaurant to do, but again, kind of background. The restaurant was very busy. It was very stressful. It was a very touristy town. So a very small town, but in the summer times we got very, very busy with summer tourism. And the job was literally killing me. One day I was sitting at my boss's desk for a weekly check-in and my nose began to bleed and I passed out.
Wow.
And I had hypertension, high blood pressure. And a couple days later, Shell and I were sitting on our front porch in our little cabin out in the woods and just enjoying some wine and the late summer sun. And she looked at me and she said, "Shawn, do you want to die not knowing if you ever could have made it as an artist?"
Wow.
And I mean, that was like, I'm getting goosebumps. It was like a lightning bolt. Forgive me, a little emotional. It was like a lightning bolt hit me. And she's always been so supportive of me and in anything that I do, especially as an artist. And we started talking and we made the decision. This was back in 20, it was before COVID, 2019, before COVID hit. And I said, okay, we're going to sell the little cabin that I had originally bought to give us a little bit of money. And I gave 6 months notice at my job. But then COVID hit, and I ended up staying at the restaurant and the brewery for quite a bit longer, helping them get through that very tough time. So in like late 2020, around September 2020, they were things were settling down and they were doing better. And I said, okay, it's time to move on. So I embraced life as a full-time artist, uh, and been doing that pretty much since. But it's hard. It was hard in rural Alaska. I didn't have a good business plan and we were pretty isolated. And I was doing okay, mostly commission work. People were, supportive and asking me for paintings to do. And so I was creating things for people. And that was really fulfilling. That's when I really started to embrace commissions. When I was in my 20s, I painted for me,
Hmm.
things that I thought were beautiful. When I started embracing art at this chapter of my life, people began to ask me to make things for them, specifically for them, about their life. And that was a big shift for me. Um, and the connection was tremendous. Like that when you hand over a piece of art to somebody that's for them and they look at it for the first time and you can just see them well up with emotion because you've told some story, their story, their legacy, something important in their life. It's made tangible on a piece of art. Um, I can't express that feeling, that exchange that happens
Mm.
when 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 I connect with somebody on a personal level. And since then, it's been it. Commissions has been my thing, making things personal.
How did you wind up in Conway, Arkansas? Is my next question.
Right, I know. I mean, a place that most U.S. citizens can't find on a map.
Right.
My wife's family lives here. Her youngest sister, moved here years ago, and then her parents, when they retired, wanted to be close to the grandkids. We don't have kids, but my sister-in-law does have a family, and they wanted to be close. So they moved to Greenbrier, which is near Conway.
Hmm.
And in, gosh, 20, I should know this. It's the date the year we got married. I'm on the spot here. I need to look at my phone. Right after we got married, my father passed very suddenly. And we went down to California for 3 months to tie up his estate and take care of things. And then when we got back, her father started to have health problems. And we came out here to Arkansas for a major surgery, and she stayed behind to help the family for a bit. And when she came home, she just said, Shawn, I feel, as she calls it, the hand on the back. That's what she calls it. I feel the hand on the back to be with my parents for their final chapter. And I couldn't say no to that. I mean, I didn't get that with my father. I didn't get that with my mother.
Right.
And I didn't want her to miss out on that. So we made another big jump. We put the house up on the market, sold the house as is, turnkey, full of everything. Like we didn't get rid of anything. The person that bought it got a snow machine, or sorry, a four-wheel and a generator and all that. Like we just left it all behind.
Wow.
We took the down payment and bought an old 1993 RV we called Peace Arrow, and we loaded it up with everything we could pack in there and drove to Arkansas. Went all the way through Canada, took a month and drove 4,000 miles
Wow.
and landed here in Greenbrier and now Conway. It's the library that brought me into Conway, the job. But yeah, never in my life dreamed I would live in Arkansas.
Well, as you know, probably I grew up there, and
Right.
it's an interesting state. I mean, I love it a great deal, but it can be a very frustrating place for me as well. I'm so curious. I know that you have really found yourself when you talk about this idea of service. And we talked about the library, which it sounds like it's more than a job to you. But I'm also wondering about other things in terms of your artwork that you've involved yourself in there in Arkansas. Has that expanded for you, this community of artists?
In a way that I never expected. It was tough when I got here. I thought, oh, I can be an artist anywhere, right? Art can translate anywhere. Um, Not so much in Central Arkansas.
Interesting.
Not the art that I was doing. And I'll be honest, my price points as an artist, I there's a lot of fairs, craft fairs, that kind of stuff. People here are very accustomed to, they might spend 30 or $40 for a print. They don't expect to spend a lot of money on
Right.
art. At least not when I first got here, not the circles I was getting myself into. And I found it very difficult to make a living as an artist. People weren't into commissions. So it was very challenging for me. I would go to arts fairs and crafts fairs, and they'd see a price tag on a painting and they'd just shake their head and say, no, no, thank you. And it was really hard to connect artistically here. And so I was accepted into a program called Artist Inc. I was awarded a fellowship. It's a Middle America Arts Alliance. They're based out of Kansas City. And it's a program to help artists become better business people. And that was really great. I began to meet other creatives, some of whom I'm still friends with. This was a couple of years ago. And then I went deeper. I joined a mentorship program called Artist in Business, and it was a very significant financial investment, but went really deep into my why and how I connect with people. And this program really got me open to the idea of partnership, working with people or businesses to say, how can I serve your community? As I got deeper into this process and asking myself about why I do what I do, and this was happening concurrently with the library, all happening at the same time. And I think the library reinforced this process of if people people need to value, they're looking for value, connectivity in art. Right? Art can be simply beautiful, art can
Hmm.
be inspiring, but I create commissions and it's a deeply personal process. And so people need to value that process. And so I began to like, okay, I'm doing something really special with people. I'm capturing a moment in life or a place, some memory, some experience. And then as we share and talk, like if I was to do a commission for you, we would sit and I would get to know you just like we're getting to know each other right now. I want to know your story. And so people share that. And it takes me back to when I was selling paintings in my 20s that somebody would even want what I do, but then it would spark something in them. But really, what the real magic was when they personally connected to the art. It brought back a memory or a feeling. And so that idea of service you talk about was like, how can I bring value to someone's life through art, right? Why would somebody value this? What do I have to give them? And
Mm.
it's that energy exchange. And the deeper I got into that, I began to realize like that is what matters most to me.
Right.
That's really why I do it now. And I think we shift as we get older, right? 20s versus 50s. I think a lot of us get into this chapter and we begin to reflect on our lives. It's time to start giving back. Um,
Right.
so part of the process is, you hop on Chat GPT or Claude and you ask, okay, here's my artist bio, here's my artist statement, here's my why. Find me organizations that I might align with. Literally, it was that kind of simple and straightforward. And what started coming back to me was health and wellness organizations, legacy organizations, people preserving memories, families, people end of life transitioning. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to start reaching out to some of these people. And so I did. I just started sending, my wife helps with the marketing too, and we just started sending out emails. Would you be interested in having a conversation to see how my art could somehow benefit your community? And what was coming back was end of life doulas responded. The University of Arkansas Medical Sciences Wellness Mindfulness Program responded. The Arkansas Wellness Network is a new organization, responded.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, well, that's what's aligning is these people that are talking about health, wellness, major life transition. And so I listened and I've begun to partner with these organizations and it's growing. And I'm actually like, I'm getting goosebumps again. I did not expect it. It's growing slowly, but it's happening. And I didn't realize there would be such excitement around art in these communities. It's not built into them. And so there's
Right.
this genuine curiosity, it seems like, of these people saying, wow, here's an artist that wants to get involved with wellness. Here's an artist that wants to sit with people as they transition out of this life and create something meaningful for them and their families. And I'm surprised that they're surprised, but
Right.
it seems to be clicking.
The sense I get from your story, I mean, there may be many artists who say, for me, it's all about the process. And I've not heard you not say that, but for you, it really is this sense of being in community, whether it's a couple of other people or whether it's a wider association, and finding that place where you and the other person, whether it's someone commissioning your art or the organization you work with, overlap and click. That is the part that is your why, that excitement for you. Is that fair, or do you think that it's a balance of both the process and then also the audience and the community?
It's the connection. And I don't know why. That's me, I suppose. And again, I think maybe it's the chapter of life as we get a little older, but it's the connection. And then Just to throw out some stats, I didn't realize Arkansas, 49th in the country for health and wellness, 50th in the country for food security. I didn't know that until I worked at the library. And so I can't help but wonder. I tell my wife this all the time. We're here for a reason. And we were called to this community to be of service to this community in a way that neither one of us even dreamed of. She has just started becoming or doing her training to become an end-of-life doula. That wasn't on the radar 2 years ago, not even in our wildest dreams.
Right.
And so now we're dreaming of working together. So she can help people in that process, and I can be a part of that process. We dream of teaming up and using art and her natural abilities as a healer to help people with end of life transition and help families with end of life transition. That never would have happened had we not come here and gone through the bumps and bruises and scrapes that we've gone through in adjusting to life in a place that doesn't generally really align with our values in many ways. But we're finding our people.
Right. I don't want to say, what's the word? It's not the destination, but it's like the way that you've landed. It does sound so haphazard, but I think the difference is that instead of treating it as haphazard, you really looked around. And I liked how you said you listened. You listened. It's very provocative to think about where you are now and how you got there.
Yeah, I was just reflecting, I just keep coming back to there's such a sense of gratitude. When I think back at Shell's question, do you want to die not knowing if you could have made it as an artist? Even back then, what, 5, 6 years ago, what I thought it meant to be an artist is so different from what it means to me now to be an artist. These times are pretty intense, right? What is the old, was it Chinese or Japanese curse? May you live in interesting times. I hear a call. I did not expect it to be in Arkansas, but there's a need here. I'm being called and I hear it. And I feel the need to answer that. I think we all have multiple gifts and talents. And so I feel a responsibility to use that where I'm at in a meaningful way. And again, the overlap is real. The library has kind of galvanized me and shown me what the community needs, and then the art has aligned with that. And again, like you said, I'm listening and trying to figure out how to make it work and then how to make a living. In my dream life, I would love to transition. I'm working on transitioning back into art full time. I want to maintain some kind of activity at the library and the urban farm project, whether I volunteer at the community garden or however that works. I don't want that to not be a part of my life. But if art could be my full time again, that's what I'm working on manifesting and hoping that maybe in the healing community, in the wellness community, there's space for that. And there's room for the energy exchange. As artists, we sometimes have a hard time receiving, right? Putting value on our work. Um, I carry a lot of that from my father's voice. So learning to say, yes, I have value as an artist. I have something that I can give of meaning to the community, and it's okay for me to make a living at it.
Right. Well, I think this is a really good place to let you tell us where people can find out more about you.
Thank you. I'm online. ShawnBstudios.com is my website. You can see my work there. And I really want to invite people. There's a little tab up there. It says book a call. And it's just a conversation. I really want to connect with people and find out how you imagine I can be of service. We can talk. Let's get creative about art. We come into this world as artists. Every kid believes they're an artist. And I believe that we should leave this world feeling creative too. And so I really want to help inspire people to feel creative. So you can find me at ShawnBstudios.com or at Shawn B Studios on all social media platforms. I'm out there and would love to connect with anybody who wants to talk more about this kind of stuff. Just talk.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to come talk to me on this show. I have really enjoyed hearing your journey. So I'm wishing you well, and I hope that you'll stay in touch and let me know how things progress for you.
Yes, thanks, Pam.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Thank you so much to Shawn B. Standley for sharing his journey back to art. I'll leave all of his info in the show notes so that you can connect with Shawn about how art can play a role in your life. And thanks to all of you for listening today. I'm not using social media right now, but you can always connect with me through my website, arthealsallwoundspodcast.com. I also have a Substack, so if you want to follow what's happening with the show, I'd love for you to subscribe. The music you've heard in this podcast is by Quetzal and Lobo Loco.